Jake Morrison stood in front of the large blue screen that showed the galaxy map. He had been looking at star charts for 15 years, but something was wrong with this one. The map showed thousands of star systems, trade routes, and planets, where different alien races lived. But there was a big empty circle in one part of the map. The circle had a simple label that said, Restricted Zone 7743. Jake touched the screen and tried to get more information about the empty space. The computer made a soft beeping sound and showed the same message it always did. Access denied. Contact Galactic Council for authorization. Zefka, Jake called to his navigator. The tall, thin alien had blue skin and 4 arms. He was from a planet called Altair Prime. Come look at this. Zefka walked over on his long legs. His big eyes looked at the screen, and Jake saw him. Step back a little. Commander Morrison, this is not something we should discuss. Why not? Jake asked. I've been mapping this part of space for 3 years. Every time I ask about this empty zone, everyone gets quiet. What's in there? The alien's 4 arms moved in a nervous way. Some boundaries exist for good reasons, human. That is all I can say. Jake had heard this same answer from many different aliens. The Centaurians would not talk about it. The Vegan traders would change the subject. Even the Galactic Council members would not give him a straight answer. This made Jake more curious. Not less. He went to his private office and opened the files, from the person who had his job before him. Captain Lisa Grant had been the chief cartographer for the survey division before Jake took over. Her files were mostly normal reports about mapping new star systems and updating trade routes. But her last few reports were different. Jake read one that was dated just 2 weeks before she left her job. The energy readings from Restricted Zone 7743 are unlike anything we have seen before. The sensors are picking up massive power sources, but they do not match any known technology in our database. Jake kept reading. Lisa had written, I requested permission to send a probe into the Restricted Zone. The Galactic Council denied my request within 1 hour. When I asked for a reason, they told me the zone was empty space with dangerous radiation, but my scans show no radiation at all. The last entry in Lisa's files made Jake's hands shake a little as he read it. Something is definitely in that zone. The technology readings suggest machines and ships that are hundreds of years ahead of anything the galactic races have built. I am submitting a formal request to investigate. Whatever is in there, it is not natural and it is not empty. Below that entry was a note from the Galactic Council. Captain Grant's assignment has been changed. She is being transferred to administrative duties immediately. All research into Restricted Zone 7743 is to stop. Jake leaned back in his chair. Lisa Grant was known as one of the best explorers in the galaxy. She had discovered 12 new civilizations and mapped more star systems than any other cartographer. The council would not transfer her unless they were very worried about something. He looked at his star charts again. The restricted zone was perfectly round, which was strange. Natural things in space were not usually perfect circles. Asteroid, fields, nebulae, and radiation zones had irregular shapes. This looked like someone had drawn a line and said, "Do not cross this." Jake's ship, the Endeavour, was scheduled to map systems near the edge of the restricted zone for the next 2 months. It was routine work, but it would put them closer to the mysterious boundary than any survey ship had been in years. 3 weeks later, Jake and his crew were working near the edge of known space. They had just finished scanning a small system, with 6 planets when their communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, looked up from her station. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," she said. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked. "It's a distress signal, but it's not from any known ship design. The signal is coming from inside the restricted zone." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "How far inside the boundary?" Amy checked her readings. "About 2 light years past the edge. The signal is weak, but it's definitely a ship in trouble." Jake looked at the main screen. The edge of the restricted zone appeared as a red line on their navigation display. Beyond that line, their sensors could not get clear readings. But they could detect the distress signal. "Sir," said his security chief, Lieutenant Ben Parker, Regulations say we cannot enter the restricted zone under any circumstances. We should report this to the Galactic Council and let them handle it. Jake knew Ben was right. The rules were very clear. No ships were allowed in the restricted zone. No exceptions. But Jake also knew that if there was a ship in trouble, people might be dying while they waited for council approval. Amy, can you tell what type of ship it is? Jake asked. No, sir. The signal format is not in our database, but it's definitely a standard distress call. Someone is asking for help. Jake's mind raced. He thought about Lisa Grant's reports. He thought about how every alien race seemed afraid to even talk about the restricted zone. He thought about the perfect circle on the map and the energy readings that suggested advanced technology. Zefka, what is the fastest route to the distress signal? Jake asked. The blue alien's forearms moved in alarm. Commander, we cannot go there. The boundary is forbidden. I'm not asking if we should go there. I'm asking for the fastest route. Zefka looked around the bridge. The other crew members were watching Jake carefully. The fastest route would take 4 hours at maximum warp speed. Jake made his decision. It was the kind of decision that could end his career or start a war. But it was also the kind of decision that could save lives and finally answer the questions that had been bothering him for years. Set course for the distress signal, Jake ordered. Maximum warp. Sir, Ben said quietly. This could be considered an act of war against whoever controls that space. Jake looked at the red line on the screen that marked the boundary of the unknown. Then I guess we're about to find out who that is. The Endeavour crossed the red line into restricted space at exactly 14:32 Galactic Standard Time. Jake watched the boundary disappear behind them on the main screen. He expected alarms to sound or enemy ships to appear, but nothing happened. Space looked the same on both sides of the invisible line. Sensors are picking up the disabled ship, Amy reported. It's 3 kilometers ahead. Jake stared at what appeared on their view screen. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was huge, maybe 3 times the size of the Endeavour, but it had smooth curves instead of the angular designs most alien ships used. The metal hull was a dark gray color and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. That's not in any ship database, Ben said, checking his security scans. The design is completely unknown. Life signs? Jake asked. Amy worked at her station for a moment. I'm reading 5 life forms aboard the ship. They appear to be in a safe area, but their ship has major damage to the engine section. Any response to our hails? Not yet, sir. Jake studied the strange ship. Its size suggested it was a major vessel, maybe a cruiser or battleship, but there were no visible weapons ports or defensive systems. The design looked more like a transport or research vessel. Zefka, move us closer. Amy, keep trying to make contact. As they approached, Jake noticed something that made him uncomfortable. The disabled ship was massive, but his sensors suggested it was just a small transport. If this was what they considered a small ship, what did their large ships look like? Commander, Amy said suddenly. I'm getting a response. They're speaking. Galactic Standard. Put it on speakers. A woman's voice filled the bridge. She sounded calm despite being stranded in space. Unknown vessel, this is transport ship Morning Star. We appreciate your assistance. Our engines failed during a routine supply run. Jake picked up his communication device. Morning Star. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the survey ship Endeavour. Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance? No injuries, Commander. We have 5 people aboard. Our life support is stable, but we cannot repair our engines. Without parts we don't have. We can transport your crew to our ship and provide assistance. What species are you? There was a pause. Then the woman said something that made Jake's blood run cold. Species? We're human, Commander. Same as you. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him with the same confused expression he felt on his own face. Did you say human? Yes, Commander. Is there a problem? Jake's mind raced. There were no human ships in this part of space. In fact, there were very few human ships anywhere. Humans were one of the younger races in the galaxy. They had only developed faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Most human colonies, We're close to Earth, nowhere near the restricted zone. Morningstar, what is your point of origin? Jake asked. Another pause. We launched from New Terra Station in the Ross sector. Commander, are you really from outside the boundary? That should be impossible. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. What do you mean, outside the boundary? The defensive perimeter. Nothing gets past our security grid. How did you get through? Ben leaned over to Jake and whispered, Sir, this could be a trap. There are no human colonies in the Ross sector. Jake held up his hand for silence. Morningstar, we're going to transport you aboard our ship. We need to talk face to face. Understood, Commander. We're ready for transport. Minutes later, 5 people materialized in the Endeavor's transport room. Jake and his security team were waiting for them. What he saw made him question everything. He thought he knew about the galaxy. The 5 people were definitely human. They wore uniforms that looked advanced but not alien. Their leader was a woman with short brown hair and intelligent green eyes. She looked around the transport room with interest rather than fear. I'm Katie Brooks, she said, extending her hand. Transport pilot. Thank you for the rescue. Jake shook her hand. Commander Jake Morrison, these are my officers. We need to ask you some questions. Of course, but first I have to ask you something. You said you're from outside the boundary. That's impossible. Our defensive systems don't let anything through. What defensive systems? Jake asked. Katie looked at her. Companions. A tall man with dark hair stepped forward. I'm Ryan Hayes, navigation specialist. Commander, are you saying you don't know about the perimeter defense grid? I don't know what you're talking about, Jake said. This space was marked as a restricted zone on our maps. We thought it was empty. Ryan and Katie exchanged glances. Katie spoke slowly, as if she was talking to a child. Commander, this entire region contains 12,000 human colony systems. The boundary marks the edge of human space. Nothing gets in or out without authorization. Jake felt dizzy. 12,000 colonies? That's impossible. Humans have maybe 50 colonies total, all close to Earth. Earth? Ryan asked. You mean the old homeworld? Commander, we've been expanding for over 300 years. Earth is just a small historical site now. That's not possible, Ben said. The galactic databases show humans as a minor species. We've only had space travel for 2 centuries. Katie looked confused. What galactic databases? Are you saying there are other intelligent species out there? Jake stared at her. Other species? The galaxy has hundreds of intelligent species. The Galactic Council has 47 member races. How do you not know this? Because we've never met any other intelligent species, Ryan said. We've explored thousands of star systems and found planets with life, but never anything as advanced as us. Jake's legs felt weak. He sat down on a nearby chair. This doesn't make sense. You're saying you've never heard of the Altarians, the Centaurians, the Vegans, the Trade Federation, the Galactic Survey Division? Katie shook her head. Never heard of any of them. Commander, how many intelligent species did you say there were? The known galaxy contains over 200 intelligent species, Jake said. Most of them have been spacefaring for thousands of years. Humans are considered one of the newer races. That's fascinating, said a woman with red hair. I'm Dr. Helen Price. I study alien life forms, but we've never found any intelligent species. This is the discovery of the century. Jake looked at his crew. Zefka's forearms were shaking. Amy looked like she had seen a ghost. Ben had his hand on his weapon, though Jake was not sure why. Katie, Jake said slowly, when you said nothing gets past your defense grid, what exactly did you mean? Just that. The boundary is protected by automated defense platforms. They stop any ship from entering or leaving human space without proper authorization. The system has been in place for over a century. What happens to ships that try to cross the boundary? Katie looked uncomfortable. They're turned back. If they refuse to leave, they're disabled and their crews are questioned. And if they keep trying to enter, Ryan answered this time, they're destroyed. We can't allow unknown forces into human space. It's a matter of security. Jake felt cold. How many ships have tried to cross your boundary? Over the years? Maybe a few hundred, Katie said. We always assumed they were automated probes from some unknown source. We never imagined they might contain intelligent life. Jake realized that hundreds of galactic exploration ships had probably been destroyed by the humans' defensive systems. No wonder the Galactic Council had marked this area as restricted. They were not trying to keep people out of empty space. They were trying to keep them away from a human military force that shot first and asked questions later. Katie, Jake said carefully, I need you to contact your authorities. We have a situation here that could affect the entire galaxy. Katie nodded and pulled out a small device. I'll signal for pickup. The response fleet should be here within the hour. How many ships in a response fleet? Ben asked. Katie smiled. Just a few hundred. Standard protocol for a rescue operation in the outer territories. Jake closed his eyes. In 1 hour, several hundred advanced human warships would arrive at his location. Ships built by a human civilization that had been expanding and developing for 3 centuries while the rest of the galaxy thought humans were primitives living close to Earth. He looked at Zefka. Send a message to Galactic Command. Tell them we have made contact with an unknown human military force. Tell them to send diplomats, not warships. Yes, Commander, Zefka said, his voice shaking. Jake looked back at Katie. She was still smiling, as if meeting alien races was just an interesting surprise. He wondered if she understood that her rescue beacon had just started the biggest change in galactic history since the formation of the Galactic Council. In less than an hour, everything would change. Jake stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, watching the empty space around them. Katie had activated her emergency beacon 47 minutes ago. Her rescue fleet would arrive any minute now. Jake's stomach felt tight with worry. Commander, Amy called from her station. I'm detecting ships approaching. A lot of ships. Jake gripped the rail in front of him. How many? Amy checked her sensors twice before answering. Sir, I count over 400 vessels approaching our position. 400 ships for a rescue mission? Ben asked. That's a full battle fleet. Jake watched the main screen as the first ships appeared. They seemed to materialize out of empty space without warning. One moment there was nothing. The next moment the area around the Endeavor was filled with sleek, dark ships. The human vessels were beautiful in a deadly way. They had smooth lines and appeared to be made of the same light-absorbing material as Katie's transport ship. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the Endeavor, without appearing threatening. But Jake could tell these were warships. Advanced warships. Commander, Amy said in a quiet voice, our sensors cannot get clear readings on their weapons systems. Their technology is blocking our scans. Are they targeting us? I don't think so. They're just watching us. Katie walked onto the bridge with Ryan and Dr. Price. She looked at the screen showing the human fleet and nodded with satisfaction. Right on time. The response fleet always arrives within an hour. Jake stared at the ships surrounding them. Each one was larger than the Endeavor. The smallest ships in the fleet were twice the size of the biggest vessels in the Galactic Navy. Katie, how many people live in human space? About 40 billion across all the colony worlds, she said casually. Why do you ask? Jake's mouth went dry. The entire known galaxy had maybe 30 billion intelligent beings across all species. Humans alone had more people than the rest of the galaxy combined. Incoming transmission, Amy announced. Put it on screen. The face that appeared was human, middle-aged with gray hair and calm blue eyes. The man wore a dark uniform with simple rank insignia. He looked like someone who was used to being in command. Captain Morrison, I am Admiral Ben Carter of the Human Defense Force. I understand you provided assistance to our people. We appreciate that. Jake stepped forward. Admiral Carter, I'm Commander Morrison, not Captain. We responded to a distress call. It was just a standard rescue operation. Of course. However, we now have a situation that requires careful handling. You and your crew have entered human space without authorization. More importantly, you represent alien civilizations that we were not prepared to make contact with today. The way Admiral Carter said today made Jake nervous. Sir, we had no idea this was human space. Our maps showed this area as empty. Admiral Carter smiled slightly. Yes, we know about your maps. We've been monitoring galactic communications and databases for quite some time. We're familiar with the Galactic Council, the Trade Federation, and most of the major spacefaring species. Jake felt his world spinning. You've been monitoring us. For about 200 years, yes. We've found it useful to observe the development of galactic civilization from a distance. 200 years, Jake repeated. But humans only developed faster than light travel 200 years ago. Commander Morrison, I think there has been some confusion about human technological development. May I ask where you got your information about human space travel? Jake looked at his crew. From the galactic databases, from historical records, from contact with human colonies near Earth. Admiral Carter nodded. I see the problem. Commander, the humans you've had contact with are what we call the Earth Sphere colonies. They represent the humans who chose to stay close to the home world and develop at a slower pace. They are not part of the greater human expansion. Greater human expansion? Commander, humans began serious space exploration 350 years ago. We developed faster than light travel 300 years ago. The colonies near Earth were established by people who wanted to maintain the old ways of life. The majority of humanity moved outward to explore and settle new worlds. Jake sat down, heavily in his command chair. Are you saying there are two human civilizations? Not exactly. Think of it as two approaches to development. The Earth Sphere humans preferred slow, careful expansion with close ties to the homeworld. They interacted with alien species and joined galactic society. The colonial humans preferred rapid expansion and technological advancement without outside influence. And your colonial humans. Correct. We represent the majority of human civilization. About 95% of all humans live in colonial space. Jake looked at the fleet of ships surrounding them. Each ship looked more advanced than anything he had ever seen. Admiral, what is your technological level compared to the galactic standard? Admiral Carter paused for a moment. That's a difficult question to answer diplomatically. Let me just say that we've had several centuries to develop without the political and economic limitations that seem to affect galactic civilization. Dr. Price spoke up from behind Jake. Admiral Carter, I'm Dr. Price from your rescue team. Could you give them a basic comparison? Admiral Carter looked at Dr. Price and nodded. Very well. Dr. Price, please tell Commander Morrison about our basic technology. Dr. Price looked excited. Commander, we've had quantum manipulation drives for 300 years. We have artificial gravity, molecular assembly, consciousness transfer technology, and energy-to-matter conversion. Most of our ships are controlled by artificial intelligence systems, and we've solved aging and most diseases. Jake stared at her. Consciousness transfer? You can move a person's mind from one body to another? It's routine medical technology, she said. We've had it for over a century. Admiral Carter's image on the screen leaned forward slightly. Commander Morrison, I hope you're beginning to understand our situation. Your people think of humans as a young, developing species. In reality, we're probably the most technologically advanced civilization in the galaxy. Then why haven't you made contact with the Galactic Council? Jake asked. Because we weren't sure you were ready for contact with us. Your civilization still solves disputes through warfare. Your economic systems are inefficient. Your technological development has been remarkably slow compared to human standards. Jake felt insulted. Slow? The galactic species have been developing for thousands of years. Yes, and in those thousands of years, most species have made very little real progress. They fight the same wars, make the same mistakes, and advance at the same slow pace. Humanity went from primitive space travel to quantum manipulation in less than a century. Because you didn't have to deal with other species, Ben said angrily. Admiral Carter smiled. Lieutenant, we've been dealing with other species. We've been studying all of you very carefully. We know your political systems, your military capabilities, your economic structures, and your technological limitations. We've been preparing for this contact for 2 centuries. The bridge fell silent. Jake realized that while the galactic species thought they were the advanced civilizations in the galaxy, humans had been quietly studying them like specimens in a laboratory. "Admiral," Jake said carefully, "what happens now?" "That depends entirely on how the Galactic Council chooses to handle this situation. We're hoping for peaceful contact and cooperation, but we're prepared for other possibilities as well." Jake looked at the hundreds of ships surrounding the Endeavor. Each ship probably had more firepower than an entire galactic fleet. "What other possibilities?" "Commander, we've spent 3 centuries preparing for contact with galactic civilization. We've run thousands of scenarios and prepared for every possible response. We hope you'll choose the path that leads to mutual cooperation and benefit. And if we don't?" Admiral Carter's expression became more serious. "Then we'll do what we think is best for the galaxy as a whole. We've been waiting for galactic civilization to mature enough for productive contact. If that time hasn't come, yet we'll continue to wait." Jake understood the implication. If the Galactic Council responded with hostility or refused reasonable cooperation, humanity had the power to enforce whatever outcome they preferred. "Admiral, I need to report this contact to my superiors. What should I tell them?" "Tell them that humanity is ready for formal diplomatic contact, but on terms that reflect our actual capabilities and position. Tell them we're prepared to share beneficial technology and provide mutual assistance. And tell them we hope they'll approach this situation with wisdom rather than fear." The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a screen full of human warships. Katie walked over to him. "Commander, I hope this works out peacefully," she said. "But you should know that Admiral Carter is considered one of our more diplomatic officers. Not all human leaders are as patient as he is." Jake closed his eyes. In one day, he had discovered that humans were the most powerful species in the galaxy, and that the galactic species had been living under human observation for centuries without knowing it. "Amy," he said quietly, "send a priority message to Galactic Command. Tell them we need diplomats and negotiators, not military officers, and tell them to come prepared to negotiate from a position of weakness." Admiral Carter kept his word about diplomatic treatment, but Jake quickly learned that human hospitality came with conditions. The Endeavor was escorted by 12 human ships to what Admiral Carter called a diplomatic facility. Jake and his crew were treated as honored guests, but they were definitely not free to leave. The facility was a space station orbiting a planet called New Terra. As their shuttle approached the station, Jake stared out the window in amazement. The station was larger than the capital cities of most galactic worlds. Ships moved in and out of docking bays that could hold vessels the size of Galactic Council battleships. "How many people live on this station?" Jake asked their escort, a human woman named Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell. "About 2 million, she said casually. "It's just a mid-size facility. The major shipbuilding stations house 10 to 15 million people." Jake's crew exchanged nervous glances. A mid-size human facility had more people than most galactic colonies. They were given comfortable quarters and told they would meet with Dr. Helen Price for what she called a cultural orientation briefing. Jake was beginning to understand that humans had a polite way of saying things that were actually quite serious. Dr. Price met them in a large conference room with windows that showed the planet below. New Terra looked like Earth, with blue oceans and green continents. But Jake could see the lights of massive cities covering entire continents, far larger than anything on Earth or any other world he had visited. "Gentlemen," Dr. Price said as they sat down, "I've been asked to help you understand the situation you found yourselves in. Admiral Carter thought it would be easier for you to hear this from someone who isn't a military officer." "What situation?" Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Dr. Price activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. But this map was different from any galactic chart Jake had ever seen. It showed human space as a vast area containing thousands of systems, with detailed information about other galactic civilizations marked around the edges. This is how we see the galaxy, Dr. Price said. The area in blue represents human space. The other colors show the territories of various alien species. Jake stared at the map. Human space was enormous, far larger than the territory of any other species. But more disturbing were the detailed notes about every other civilization. The map showed military strengths, economic data, political structures, and technological assessments for every galactic species. How long have you been gathering this information? Jake asked. We've had comprehensive intelligence on galactic civilization for about 150 years. We started with basic observation, but over time we developed more detailed methods of study. What kind of methods? Dr. Price looked uncomfortable. We've had observation teams in most major galactic societies for over a century. We study your politics, your technology, your military capabilities, and your social development. Jake felt cold. You have spies in the Galactic Council? We prefer the term cultural observers. But yes, we have people in all the major galactic institutions. We needed to understand how your civilizations work before we made contact. Ben leaned forward angrily. You've been spying on us for a century, and you never thought to introduce yourselves? Lieutenant, would you have been ready for this conversation a century ago? Your species were still fighting wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Most galactic civilizations were barely capable of interplanetary travel. Jake looked at the holographic display again. Dr. Price, show us the military comparison. Dr. Price hesitated. Commander, I'm not sure that would be helpful right now. Show us. She touched a control and the display changed to show military data. Jake's stomach dropped as he read the numbers. The entire Galactic Defense Force had maybe 50,000 ships. Human space showed over 2 million active vessels with production facilities capable of building fleets faster than galactic civilizations could build individual ships. 2 million ships? Jake whispered. That's just our active fleet, Dr. Price said. We have extensive automated defense networks and manufacturing capabilities that could produce additional vessels if needed. Amy spoke up for the first time. Dr. Price, why are you showing us this? This information could be considered an act of war. Because, Lieutenant Foster, we want you to understand that we're not interested in war. If we wanted to conquer galactic civilization, we could have done it at any time over the past century. We didn't, because we hoped you would eventually develop into something we could work with as equals. Equals? Ben laughed bitterly. You just showed us that you could destroy all galactic civilization without breaking a sweat. Dr. Price nodded sadly. Yes, we could, but we don't want to. We want partners, not subjects. We want to help galactic civilization advance to a level where we can have meaningful cooperation. Jake studied the woman across from him. Dr. Price, what do you mean by advance to a level? What level do you think we need to reach? Commander, your civilization still solve disputes through military action. You have poverty and disease that could be eliminated with better technology. You spend enormous resources on weapons instead of exploration and development. You've made very little progress in the past 1,000 years. And you think you can fix these problems? We know we can. We've solved them in human space. We don't have war between human colonies. We don't have poverty or hunger. We eliminated most diseases centuries ago. We've learned to work together for common goals instead of fighting over resources. Jake looked out the window at New Terra. How? Partly through technology, but mostly through better organization. When you don't have to worry about basic survival, when everyone has what they need, when you can focus on exploration and learning instead of fighting, civilization advances much faster. And you want to impose this on the galaxy? Dr. Price shook her head. We want to offer it to the galaxy. There's a big difference. We can provide technology and guidance, but each civilization would need to choose to change. What if they choose not to change? Dr. Price was quiet for a long moment. Then we would continue to wait. But Commander, we can't wait forever. There are threats in the galaxy that your current level of technology cannot handle. What threats? Other galaxies contain hostile civilizations. Deep space contains dangers you haven't encountered yet. The galaxy needs to be unified and advanced enough to defend itself. We've been preparing for those threats for 3 centuries. Jake felt overwhelmed. You're saying that everything we think we know about our place in the galaxy is wrong. I'm saying that your place in the galaxy is about to change dramatically. The question is whether that change happens through cooperation or through other methods. Other methods? Dr. Price stood up and walked to the window. Commander, imagine that you discovered a group of children playing with fire in a house full of explosives. You would try to educate them about the danger. You would offer them safer toys. You would do everything possible to prevent them from hurting themselves. And if they refused to listen, then you would have to make the decision that was best for everyone's safety, even if the children didn't like it. Jake understood. Humans saw galactic civilization as children who needed guidance. They would offer help and education, but if that was refused, they were prepared to impose safety whether the galaxy wanted it or not. Dr. Price, what happens to us? To my crew? That depends on what your government decides to do with the information you're going to take back. We're hoping they'll choose wisdom over fear. Jake looked at his crew. They all looked as overwhelmed as he felt. In a few days they had learned that humans were the dominant power in the galaxy, and that galactic civilization was being protected and studied like animals in a preserve. When can we return to galactic space? Tomorrow, you'll be escorted back to the boundary and released. You'll take a message from our leadership to the Galactic Council. What message? Dr. Price smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. That humanity is ready for formal contact, but the terms of that contact will reflect our actual capabilities. We're offering partnership, but we're not offering equality. We're too far advanced for that to be realistic. Jake closed his eyes. He was going to have to return to the Galactic Council and tell them that everything they thought they knew was wrong, that humans were not the young, developing species they appeared to be, that they were actually the most powerful force in the galaxy, and they had been watching and judging galactic civilization for centuries. Dr. Price, he said quietly, what if the Galactic Council refuses your terms? Then humanity will do what we think is best for the galaxy as a whole. We've been patient for 2 centuries, Commander, but our patience isn't unlimited. Jake looked out at New Terra again, at the massive cities and the ships moving through space like schools of fish. He was looking at a civilization that could reshape the galaxy according to its will. The only question was whether they would do it with the galaxy's cooperation or without it. Jake's return to Galactic Council space was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The humans kept their promise to release him and his crew, but they sent him back with more than just a message. They sent him with a demonstration. A single human ship escorted the Endeavor to the edge of the boundary. The ship was sleek and dark, about the same size as Jake's vessel. But when they reached the most heavily defended system in Galactic Council space, something impossible happened. Commander, Amy called out, her voice shaking. The defense grid is shutting down. Jake watched in horror as the massive defensive platforms that protected the Galactic Council's capital system simply turned off. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets powered down. Shields that had never been breached disappeared. The most secure location in known space became completely defenseless in less than 10 minutes. The human ship's captain spoke calmly over the communication system. Galactic Defense Command, this is Captain Lisa Wong of the Human Diplomatic Corps. We have disabled your defensive systems as a demonstration of our capabilities. No harm will come to your installations. This is simply a message of introduction. Jake listened as Galactic Defense Command tried desperately to restore their systems. Nothing worked. The humans had somehow taken control of technology that represented the best defense the galaxy could build. All systems will be restored in exactly 1 hour, Captain Wong continued. Please consider this a peaceful introduction to humanity's actual technological capabilities. Jake's ship was allowed to dock at the Galactic Council station. Within hours, he found himself sitting in the Council's emergency session chamber, facing representatives from every major species in the galaxy. The room was filled with fear and anger. Commander Morrison, said Council Leader Veltoth, a tall insectoid being from the Centauri system, Explain to us how a single human ship disabled our entire defense network. Jake looked around the chamber. Honored council members, I can only tell you what I saw and learned during my time in human space. Humanity is not the young, developing species we thought they were. For the next 2 hours, Jake described everything he had experienced. He told them about human technology, their vast territory, their massive fleets, and their centuries of observation. With each detail, the council members became more agitated. "This is impossible," declared Representative Zarkes from the Vegan Confederacy. "Our intelligence networks would have detected such a large civilization." "Your intelligence networks were compromised decades ago," Jake said quietly. "The humans have been studying all of you for over a century. They know your military capabilities, your economic systems, and your political structures better than you do." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some representatives demanded immediate military action. Others called for evacuation of border systems. The fear in the room was thick enough to touch. Council leader Veltoth called for silence. "Commander Morrison, what do the humans want from us?" Before Jake could answer, the chamber's main communication system activated. A woman's face appeared on the central screen. She was human, middle-aged, with calm eyes and a professional appearance. "Honored Council members, I am Ambassador Claire Davis of the Human Diplomatic Corps. I apologize for the interruption, but I believe we need to have a direct conversation." Veltoth's mandibles clicked in agitation. "How did you access our private communications?" Ambassador Davis smiled politely. "Council Leader Veltoth, we've had access to your communication systems for many years. We've been monitoring this emergency session since it began." The chamber fell silent. Every representative stared at the screen with a mixture of fear and anger. "What do you want from us?" Veltoth demanded. "We want partnership," Ambassador Davis said. "But partnership based on realistic assessments of our respective capabilities." She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The display showed detailed analyses of every galactic civilization's military strength, economic resources, and technological capabilities. "We know that the Altarian Trade Federation controls 60% of galactic commerce through monopolistic practices," she said calmly. "We know that the Centauri Republic maintains power through military intimidation of smaller species. We know that the Galactic Council makes decisions based on political influence rather than merit or logic." Representative Zarkes stood up angrily. "You have no right to judge our civilizations. We have the right of superior capability." Ambassador Davis replied without emotion. "For 2 centuries we've watched your civilizations make the same mistakes repeatedly. You fight wars over resources that are abundant in space. You maintain poverty and suffering that could be eliminated with better technology. You spend enormous resources on weapons instead of exploration and development." Jake watched the council members' reactions. Some looked angry, others looked afraid, but many looked ashamed. The human assessment was harsh, but it was also accurate. "What do you propose?" Veltoth asked quietly. Ambassador Davis's expression softened slightly. "We propose a transition to a more efficient form of galactic organization. We will share selected technologies that will eliminate poverty, disease, and resource scarcity. We will provide protection from external threats that your current military capabilities cannot handle. In return, we ask that you reorganize your political and economic systems to be more efficient and peaceful. And if we refuse, then you will continue as you are, within the boundaries you currently occupy. But you will not be permitted to expand beyond those boundaries, and you will not be allowed to threaten the stability of galactic civilization." Jake realized what the humans were proposing. They were offering to guide galactic civilization toward their standards of development, but they were also making it clear that refusal meant permanent containment. "You're talking about conquest," accused Representative Colmar from the Regellian Empire. "We're talking about guidance," Ambassador Davis corrected. "If we wanted conquest, you would already be conquered. We have the capability to occupy every major system in the galaxy within a matter of weeks. We don't want your territory, we don't need your resources. What we want is for galactic civilization to mature to the point where we can have meaningful cooperation. She paused and looked directly at each council member through the screen. Honored representatives, you have a choice to make. You can work with us to build a better form of galactic civilization, or you can maintain your current systems under our observation and protection. But you cannot continue to advance at your current pace while threats from outside the galaxy are growing stronger. What outside threats? Jake asked. Ambassador Davis turned her attention to him. Commander Morrison, your species' exploration has been limited to this galaxy. There are hostile civilizations in nearby galaxies that consider this region a potential target for expansion. Your current technology and organization would not survive contact with those forces. The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. The humans were not just offering guidance for improvement, they were warning about dangers that required their level of technology to survive. How long do we have to decide? Veltoth asked. Take all the time you need for discussion. But understand that while you're deciding, we will be implementing certain protective measures throughout the galaxy. We cannot allow the current level of inefficiency and conflict to continue while external threats are developing. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in shocked silence. Over the following months, Jake watched as the galaxy slowly transformed. Human ships appeared in every major system, not as conquerors, but as observers and advisors. They shared medical technology that eliminated diseases. They provided energy systems that ended resource scarcity. They offered educational programs that advanced entire civilizations by centuries. But they also made it clear that certain behaviors would no longer be tolerated. Wars between species stopped when human ships simply disabled all military vessels involved in conflicts. Oppressive governments found their communication and transportation systems mysteriously failing until they reformed their policies. Jake was appointed as a liaison between the Galactic Council and the Human Diplomatic Corps. He spent his time helping other species understand their new reality. The galaxy was still free, but it was free under human guidance. One day, while reviewing reports at his new office on the Human Diplomatic Station, Jake looked out at the stars and reflected on how much had changed. The galactic map no longer ended at human space. Instead, human space had quietly expanded to encompass everything. Ambassador Davis joined him at the observation deck. Any regrets about crossing that boundary, Commander? Jake thought about the question seriously. No, regrets, but I wonder sometimes what would have happened if we had never found Katie's ship. We would have made contact eventually, she said. We were already planning to reveal ourselves within the next decade. Your discovery just moved up our timeline. Why? Reveal yourselves at all? You could have stayed hidden forever. Ambassador Davis pointed to the stars. Because the threats I mentioned are real, and they're coming whether we're ready or not. The galaxy needs to be unified and advanced enough to defend itself. We've been preparing for this for 3 centuries. Jake nodded. The humans had not conquered the galaxy.